Why is it that some ideas spread like wildfire, while others, even if they are brilliant, wither away and die in a matter of hours? Why do we remember a random urban legend for decades, but forget a crucial corporate strategy by lunchtime? In their groundbreaking book, Made to Stick, brothers Chip and Dan Heath crack the code of human attention. They argue that stickiness, the ability of an idea to stay in the mind and influence behavior, is not a mysterious gift reserved for charismatic geniuses. It is a disciplined craft. It is a set of psychological principles that anyone can learn to ensure their message isn't just heard, but remembered and acted upon. In a world drowning in digital noise, your ability to communicate effectively is your most powerful asset. Whether you are an entrepreneur pitching a vision, a teacher shaping young minds, or a leader trying to spark change, Made to Stick provides the blueprint. The authors dismantled the curse of knowledge, that invisible barrier where we forget what it's like not to know something, and show us how to bridge the gap between our minds and our audience. This book is a masterclass in psychological clarity, transforming abstract concepts into vivid, emotional, and unforgettable narratives. Prepare to dive into the 6 essential principles of sticky ideas. We are about to explore how to strip away the complex, surprise the brain, and touch the heart. This is not just about communication, it's about making your impact permanent. Before we reveal the secrets of the most unforgettable ideas in history, make sure you are part of our journey. Hit that subscribe button and join the Read and Rise community. Let's learn how to make your voice resonate and your ideas stay. Subscribe now and let's rise together. The first core idea, the power of the core and the hook of surprise. The first pillar of an idea that sticks is simplicity, but Chip and Dan Heath are quick to warn us. Simplicity does not mean dumbing down or losing the nuances of a message. Rather, it is about finding the core, the single most important essence of your idea. In a world of information overload, a message with 10 points is a message with no points. The human brain is a selective filter. If you provide too much complexity, the brain simply shuts down. To be simple is to be a master of exclusion. It is about stripping away every secondary layer until only the commander's intent remains. The authors use the brilliant example of Southwest Airlines. Their core is defined in one sentence: the low-fare airline. This simplicity isn't just a marketing slogan, it's a decision-making tool. If an employee asks if they should add a luxury salad to a flight, the answer is found in the core. Does a salad help us be the low-fare airline? No, then it's gone. This is the curse of knowledge at play. We know so much about our topic that we struggle to imagine what it's like to know nothing. Simplicity is the antidote to this curse. It's about creating proverbs, short sentences based on long experience that are easy to remember and impossible to ignore. However, even the simplest idea will fail if it doesn't get noticed. This is where unexpectedness comes in. The human brain is designed to save energy by running on autopilot. We ignore the familiar. To make an idea stick, you must first break the audience's guessing machine. You must create a gap in their knowledge that they feel a desperate need to fill. This isn't about cheap gimmicks or clickbait. It's about a strategic violation of expectations. Think of the gap theory of curiosity. When we realize there is something we don't know, it feels like an itch we must scratch. Sticky ideas start by pointing out that gap. They don't just give the answer, they make the audience feel the mystery first. By surprising the brain, you force it out of its passive state and into an active, leaning-in posture. When you combine a simple core with an unexpected hook, you don't just reach the mind, you capture the attention and hold it hostage until your message is delivered. For the Read and Rise audience, this is a lesson in intellectual discipline. It tells us that to influence others, we must first have the courage to be brief and the creativity to be surprising. It's not about who talks the longest, but who leaves the most indelible mark in the shortest time. The second core idea, the landscape of reality and the anchor of belief. Once you have captured attention with simplicity and surprise, the next challenge is to ensure your idea doesn't evaporate into thin air. This is where concreteness becomes your greatest ally. Human memory is not designed to store abstract concepts, it is designed to store sensory information. We struggle to remember strategic alignment or customer-centric synergy, but we never forget the smell of a new car or the weight of a heavy backpack. Chip and Dan Heath explained that an idea is concrete when it can be described in terms of human senses. If you can see it, smell it, or touch it, it's concrete. The curse of knowledge often traps experts in a world of high-level abstraction, but the most sticky communicators translate those abstractions back into the language of the physical world. Think of the famous Aesop's fables. The concept of flattery is abstract, but a fox trying to trick a crow into dropping a piece of cheese is concrete. By using concrete language, you create a shared mental landscape where everyone in your audience is looking at the same thing. You move the idea from the cloudy heights of theory down to the solid ground of reality. But making an idea clear is only half the battle. You must also make it believable. This leads us to credibility. Usually, we think credibility comes from status or statistics, a PhD or a complicated chart. But the authors argue for a more powerful form, internal credibility. This means the idea carries its own credentials. One of the most effective ways to achieve this is through the use of the human scale principle. Statistics are often meaningless to the human brain because they are too large to comprehend. Telling someone that thousands of people die from a disease is a statistic. Telling them that enough people die every day to fill a football stadium is a credible image. Another brilliant tool is the testable credential. Instead of asking people to believe you, you challenge them to try it for themselves. Think of Ronald Reagan's famous debate question, "Are you better off now than you were 4 years ago?" He didn't use a spreadsheet, he used the audience's own life experience as the ultimate proof. For our Read and Rise community, this section is a masterclass in intellectual integrity. It teaches us that if we want our message to have weight, we must stop hiding behind jargon and start speaking in the language of the streets and the senses. To be credible is not to be complex, it is to be so clear and so grounded in reality that your audience has no choice but to see the truth for themselves. The third core idea, the heart's logic and the simulation of experience, emotions and stories. After an idea is made simple, unexpected, concrete, and credible, it has reached the mind, but it hasn't yet moved the feet. To get people to act, you must make them feel. This is the principle of emotions. Chip and Dan Heath point out a common mistake. We often try to appeal to people's analytical minds when we should be appealing to their emotional ones. When we think analytically, we are in a critique mode, but when we feel, we are in a connection mode. The goal of sticky emotions is not about being overly dramatic, it's about making people care. The authors suggest that the most effective way to do this is to move away from the masses and focus on the individual. We are biologically wired to feel for a single person in need more than 1,000,000 people in a statistic. This is known as the Mother Teresa effect. By focusing on the self-interest or the identity of the audience, asking them to imagine who they want to be, you create an emotional bond. People don't buy features, they buy a better version of themselves. However, even with emotion, people often lack the roadmap to act. This is where the final principle, stories, acts as the ultimate mental flight simulator. A story is a powerful tool because it provides both inspiration and simulation. When we hear a story, our brains mentally rehearse the actions described. If someone tells you a story about a coworker who solved a crisis using a specific tool, your brain simulates that solution. Stories provide the how and the why in a way that a lecture never can. The authors identify 3 key plot types that have worked for centuries. The challenge plot, the underdog overcoming obstacles, like David and Goliath. The connection plot, people developing relationships across a divide, like the Good Samaritan. And the creativity plot, someone making a mental breakthrough or solving a puzzle in a new way. By wrapping your idea in a story, you bypass the audience's natural tendency to argue against you. Instead of judging your message, they are living it with you. They become part of the narrative, and when the story ends, they are left with a vivid, emotional, and actionable blueprint in their minds. For the Read and Rise audience, this is the final piece of the puzzle. It reminds us that we are not just information processors, we are story-driven beings. To make your ideas stay, you must stop being a narrator of facts and start being a curator of experiences. You must touch the heart to move the hand. The fourth core idea, the architecture of trust and the internal credential. In the world of ideas, credibility is the bridge that allows a message to cross from the mind of the speaker to the belief system of the listener. However, Chip and Dan Heath challenge our traditional understanding of what makes an idea believable. We often assume that credibility must be borrowed from external authorities, celebrities, experts with PhDs, or massive datasets. But the authors argue that the stickiest ideas carry their own internal credibility. They don't rely on who said them, but on the inherent truth they reveal. One of the most profound tools for building this internal trust is the vivid detail. In a court of law or a boardroom, a person who remembers the specific mundane details of an event is perceived as more truthful than someone who speaks in generalities. Why? Because the human brain associates concreteness with truth. If you can describe the specific texture of a problem or the exact color of a solution, your audience subconsciously decides that you must have been there. You aren't just reciting a theory, you are reporting from the front lines of reality. Furthermore, the authors introduce the human scale principle as an antidote to the statistics numbness. We live in an era of big data, but the human heart doesn't respond to big numbers, it responds to human experiences. To make a statistic credible, you must translate it into a context the audience can feel. Telling a group of citizens that a nuclear warhead has the power of 5,000 kilotons means nothing, but showing them a map of their own city and saying this single circle represents the total destruction of your home, your school, and your office creates instant, chilling credibility. Perhaps the most radical concept in this chapter is the testable credential. This is the ultimate sticky move. Instead of asking your audience to believe you, you invite them to try it for yourself. It is the see for yourself approach. When the 1980 presidential candidate Ronald Reagan asked, "Are you better off than you were 4 years ago?" he wasn't presenting a fiscal report. He was using the voters' own lives as the ultimate source of credibility. This turns the audience from passive listeners into active witnesses of your truth. For the Read and Rise audience, this is a lesson in authentic influence. It tells us that you don't need a title to be heard, and you don't need a mountain of data to be believed. What you need is the honesty to speak in vivid details, the empathy to scale your facts to human emotions, and the confidence to let your ideas stand the test of the audience's own experience. Credibility isn't about proving you are right, it's about making the truth undeniable. The fifth core idea, the emotional engine and the Mother Teresa effect. The fifth pillar of a sticky idea is emotions. Chip and Dan Heath clarify a common misconception. Making people feel isn't about being manipulative or overly dramatic. It is about making them care. The greatest barrier to action isn't a lack of information, it's a lack of concern. If the brain is the engine that processes the idea, emotion is the fuel that makes it move. The authors introduce a powerful psychological phenomenon known as the Mother Teresa effect. Research shows that people are far more likely to donate to a single starving girl named Rokia than to a massive campaign citing 21 million hungry people in Africa. Why? Because when we think about a crowd, we think analytically. When we think about an individual, we feel. Analytical thinking is the enemy of emotional connection. Once our calculating brain is switched on, our feeling brain is switched off. To make an idea stick, you must put a human face on it. You must move from the abstract masses to the specific human experience. Another crucial tool for sparking emotion is the use of self-interest. While it sounds cynical, people care most about what an idea does for them. But the Heaths suggest a deeper level than just what's in it for me. They suggest appealing to identity. We don't just act based on personal gain, we act based on who we think we are. Sticky ideas ask the audience, what does a person like you do in a situation like this? By aligning your message with the audience's sense of self, their values, their pride, and their culture, you create a bond that is much stronger than a simple transaction. For the Read and Rise audience, this is a lesson in human-centric communication. It reminds us that we are not communicating with machines, we are speaking to hearts that are seeking meaning. If you want to change someone's mind, stop shouting at their logic and start whispering to their identity. Make them feel that by embracing your idea, they are becoming the best version of themselves. The sixth core idea, the mental flight simulator, the power of stories. The final and perhaps transformative pillar of a sticky idea is stories. While the first 5 principles provide the structure and the spark, stories provide the execution. Chip and Dan Heath describe a story as not a mere entertainment device, but as a mental flight simulator. When we listen to a well-told story, our brains don't just process words, they simulate the experience. Research shows that when people hear a story, they mentally rehearse the actions, emotions, and solutions involved. A story is the bridge between knowing what to do and actually doing it. The curse of knowledge often leads us to present our ideas as final results or principles, but principles are dry and uninspiring. Stories, on the other hand, are rich in context. They show the idea in action, battling obstacles and achieving victory. The authors identify 3 primary plot types that have resonated with humanity for millennia, and understanding them is the key to mastering the art of the narrative. 1. The challenge plot. This is the classic underdog story. Think David and Goliath or the story of a startup in a garage. These stories inspire us because they show that perseverance and courage can overcome immense obstacles. They act as a call to action, urging us to work harder and face our own challenges. 2. The connection plot. These are stories about people who develop relationships across a divide, racial, social, or personal. They inspire us to be more open, more loving, and more human. They bridge the gaps in our society and remind us of our shared values. 3. The creativity plot. This involves someone making a mental breakthrough, solving a long-standing puzzle, or approaching an old problem from a radical new angle. These stories make us want to do something different, to be innovative, and to look at the world with fresh eyes. For the Read and Rise community, this final principle is the ultimate call to action. It teaches us that the best way to teach is not to lecture, but to narrate. A story bypasses the natural skepticism of the listener. While people might argue with a claim or a fact, they find it very difficult to argue with a story. By sharing the struggles and triumphs of real people, you give your audience a roadmap they can follow and the hope they need to start their own journey. The art of making ideas stick concludes here by wrapping your simple, unexpected, concrete, credible, and emotional message in the warm embrace of a story. You ensure that it doesn't just enter the mind, it stays there, grows there, and eventually changes the world. The conclusion, the legacy of a sticky idea. As we reach the end of our journey through the architecture of influence, we must realize that Made to Stick is not merely a handbook for marketers or speakers. It is a manifesto for the survival of truth in an age of noise. Chip and Dan Heath have given us more than just a set of tools. They have provided a lens through which we can view the world. They remind us that the greatest ideas in human history, those that have shaped civilizations, sparked revolutions, and comforted the brokenhearted, did not survive by accident. They survived because they were crafted, intentionally or instinctively, to honor the mechanics of the human soul. The tragedy of the modern world is not a lack of brilliant ideas. It is the fact that so many brilliant ideas are lost because they are wrapped in the curse of knowledge. We see scientists with life-saving discoveries who cannot explain them to the public, leaders with noble visions who cannot inspire their teams, and teachers with profound wisdom who cannot engage their students. The SUCCESS framework is the antidote to this tragedy. It is the bridge that allows a lonely spark of genius in one mind to become a roaring fire in the minds of millions. But let us be clear, stickiness is a responsibility. The same principles that make a life-saving medical tip stick can also make a dangerous urban legend thrive. As part of the Read and Rise community, our mission is to use these tools for the elevation of the human spirit. To be simple is to be honest. To be unexpected is to be creative. To be concrete is to be real. To be credible is to be trustworthy. To be emotional is to be human. And to be a storyteller is to be a leader. As you close this summary and step back into your world, ask yourself, what is the one idea I have that deserves to live? Don't let it die in the fog of abstraction. Strip it to its core, surprise the world with its truth, and wrap it in a story that cannot be forgotten. You have the blueprint. Now, you must build the monument. Thank you for choosing Read and Rise as your partner in this intellectual ascent. If you found this deep dive into Made to Stick valuable, show us your support by liking this video and sharing it with someone whose ideas need to be heard. We are a community that believes knowledge is only the beginning. The real power lies in how we share it. Subscribe now to join our mission. Let's keep reading, keep learning, and most importantly, let's keep rising together. Your ideas have the power to stay. Make sure they do. We'll see you in the next chapter.